There are wounds we talk about, and then there are the ones we learn to live with. The ones buried under achievement, humor, hard work, and fake strength. The ones we convince ourselves with are fine because falling apart feels inconvenient. But buried pain doesn't disappear. It leaks, it echoes, it shapes the way we love, the way we trust, and the way we breathe. We are taught to keep going, push forward, stay strong. But strength without honesty is just endurance. And endurance isn't healing, it's surviving. This episode is for the people who are tired of surviving, the ones who are ready to stop dragging yesterday into tomorrow, for the ones who want to look at the wound, not to reopen it, but to finally clean it. Welcome back to the Turning Point Journey. I'm your host, Tom Peake, and today we are going to be talking about trauma. And it's what trauma doesn't tell you. And that's hard to hear sometimes, because there comes a point in your life where the life that you've built doesn't seem safe anymore. And the walls that are meant to protect you are the ones that keep you from yourself. You can't pretend the past didn't happen. That's one thing that's for sure. You can't out-pray it, you can't out-drink it, you can't outwork it. You can't fix it even with your good intentions. Because what trauma doesn't tell you is that the silence is not healing. The time alone is not mercy. Time doesn't heal. Truth does. And the truth hurts before it even frees you. Today's conversation is about that middle ground. That middle ground is that space in between after everything falls apart and before things become whole again. It's all about rebuilding. Rebuilding what is sacred. Rebuilding through being uncomfortable. The necessary process of walking through the wreckage and choosing to start all over again. That's hard to hear, right? Because at some point in our lives, we all have needed to rebuild again. Heck, I know I have. I'm in the process of one. You're not alone in that place, because most of us, like me, are just survivors pretending to be builders. But the truth is, healing does not start when the pain stops. It starts when we stop running from what actually broke us. I think we all have noticed that after the storm, there's that strange, quiet silence that happens. And, metaphorically, I'm talking about, the storm and obviously the silence. But if you think that the silence would end up bringing you peace, it's actually the complete opposite. It can end up feeling like an absence, something that's missing. No chaos to fight for, no noise that's distracting you, just echoes of what used to be. These are like memories that kind of show up every once in a while when that pain has subsided and the echo of the person or the situation still resounds in your life. That's when questions start showing up, right? Why did this happen? Could I have done something to stop it? Will I ever be the same? These are all valid questions. We all ask them, especially people who have dealt with trauma. But trauma doesn't give answers. It leaves residue. What do I mean by that? It's almost like it lingers in the body like smoke after a fire. And we, as humans, make that mistake that the smoke is meant to be weakness, instead of evidence that we survived something that could have eventually burned us down. So the silence isn't punishment. It's proof that the noise has ended. Or it's proof that something noisy existed and now that there's silence, you've gone through that process. You got to also understand that when this silence becomes evident and present in your life, know that you've already dealt with the battle. You've started that battle process of Now, what do I do? And this is an invitation for you to listen for what's left. This is not something to take lightly. You got to actually pay attention to what your mind and your soul and your body is telling you. So there are some myths to moving on. You can search the internet. There's so many different facets of how to deal with grief, how to deal with pain, the information you need. But we live in a culture that's obsessed with closure. Oh, I need closure. Oh, why did this happen? Everyone tells you to move on. You can't move on. There are certain things that you really can't move on from. You need resolution. You need to finish the chapter, forget the story, and be positive. That's what needs to happen. But moving on isn't healing, it's relocating your pain. You carry it into the new job, a new relationship, a new version of yourself. Pretending it's gone because it's out of sight, but it's not really gone. Real healing is actually much slower. It takes time. Time is one thing that we cannot control. It's the moment that you realize you can't rebuild until you sweep the floor and see what's standing there. Ask yourself this: what have I been trying to move past instead of moving through it? Because this is an important question. The answer is usually where your next turning point begins. So we have to consider that trauma is an excellent builder. It constructs entire personalities. It teaches you to read the room faster than you have ever read before. It tells you who you should trust, who you should hide from, how to keep control. Because as you are going through that pain and grief, the thicker skin is being built and you're able to adapt to these different environments. But those structures were designed for survival and not living. Yes, you're in the process of survival, but that's not actually living. You're not living your life or the best version of your life. They're strong, but they're cold. Every brick that you are building says never again. Every wall that you construct says stay safe. And one day, you wake up realizing safety isn't the same as peace. Because constructing that thicker skin and that thicker wall does not give you peace. So, what do you do when your coping mechanisms start feeling like entrapment or cages? You start noticing the designs, you start naming the walls that you've built. You remember you built them once, which means you can unbuild them too. That is something very important to understand, is that whatever foolproof or safe mechanisms you've built, they can always be undone. Here's a small exercise. Take a piece of paper out, write the words, I built this, because you have. Underneath, list 3 patterns that once protected you, but now they limit you. Fold the paper, keep it somewhere safe, because awareness and being aware of what you're actually doing and those walls that you've built is the blueprint for change. You need that awareness for change to exist in your life, because if you are oblivious to it, you will never be able to change yourself or to be able to feel that peace. Not all pain starts with us. Some of it is passed down quietly through stories, through the silence of others, through your DNA even. It's in the way our parents flinched at conflict. They didn't want to deal with it. Way our grandparents kind of carried themselves in the sacred manner that they were so strong. If I can remember my grandma, she was just like a rock. It's the way our culture equates strength with silence. My culture does, that's for sure. But You might be healing from things that have happened even before you were born. That's why compassion matters. It's an important part of the healing process. So when we understand that some of our reactions aren't personal, they're ancestral, we stop judging ourselves and start releasing some of that generational trauma. Try this. When old fear rises, instead of asking what's wrong with me, ask who might I be healing for or from? It changes everything. We can't rewrite our lineage. We can end the repetition though. And this is speaking from an addiction point of view, obviously. Trauma is part of addiction. It's why some of us even become addicted. Trauma that's subconsciously there that we haven't dealt with. And I know for a fact that my grandfather, my mom's side, was an alcoholic. So I know that there's generational trauma there for my mom. And as well, I've kind of seen it in the stories that she tells. And this is also true for me because that trauma is carried on through me. Every healed person is a boundary that stops history from repeating itself. This may sound a little strange, and granted, I even thought it was strange until I did a little bit research into it. But suffering can be addictive. Pain becomes familiar, and that familiarity feels safe. We keep replaying the same heartbreak because we know how it ends. We confuse peace with boredom. This is where addiction's head kind of like creeps in, right? You can get addicted to your own chaos sometimes. You can crave that high of survival, that rush of fixing, saving, proving. That constant crisis is not the connection you need. You can't move on being addicted to your own suffering. The next time everything feels calm and your body starts panicking, like it always does, remember that's not danger, that's discomfort with your peace. The peace that you're trying to make. Let it be awkward, let it be new, because peace is a form of muscle. It really is. And the more you use it, the stronger it becomes. Because peace is built through the resilience of your suffering. Let's speak a little bit about forgiveness. Because forgiveness is such an important part of your pain, suffering you've built, and eventually your healing. Forgiveness is your foundation. Forgiveness isn't the finale of your healing. It's the first brick you lay. It doesn't excuse what has happened, but it kind of releases you from having to live inside of it. We wait for apologies that may never come, but forgiveness is something you built to yourself. You can forgive anybody and anything. It's within you. That is the one free will power that you have, that you can either stay angry and mad or forgive someone for what has happened. Even sometimes forgive God. Because when trauma hits hard, first person we blame is God. Because we know that forgiveness is something we build for ourselves, it says that I refuse to let yesterday keep renting space in my soul, because it really is. You are letting what happened in the past be the definition of your future, and it can't be part of your soul if you truly want to move on. Here's the truth. The people who hurt you may never change. They won't. Majority of the time, they won't. But if you carry their actions long enough, you start becoming their echoes. Forgiveness is the quiet decision to stop stop living like the wound is still happening. It's not weakness, it's freedom. Let's do a small exercise. I really want you to try this. I call it the letter you'll never send. Write a letter to the version of yourself that was betrayed or abandoned. Tell that version of yourself what you wished you had known, and end it with one sentence. You deserve better, and now you have me. It's an important fact there. So what's next? We talk a lot about making amends with others, but we rarely talk about it in the sense of making amends to ourselves. We're the ones who are abandoned most often. We're the ones hurt. Every time you dismiss your needs for rest, silence, or truth, you betray the person who's been trying to save you, yourself. Because subconsciously, we're very adept creatures. We try to feel the pain, hide the pain, but then try to relive the pain and move on from the pain. So making amends with yourself is not about being indulgent. It's more about aligning yourself with what is going on. It's asking, what would life look like if I treated myself like someone worth keeping? Like a best friend, soulmate. Let's try this reflection. Look in the mirror tonight and say, I forgive you for surviving in the ways that kept you alive, even if they hurt you later. That's not self-pity. That's true repair. What happens when the dust settles and the chaos becomes quiet? Guilt often shows up to fill that silence, right? You start replaying decisions you've made, things you've said, the people you have lost, the versions of yourself that embarrassed you. Oh my God, I cannot tell you how many times I've done this. But guilt is a survivor, not a frickin' roommate. Let it come, learn what it came to teach, then ask it to leave. Because I don't want that to be the defining character of me moving on. You can't rebuild if you keep sweeping the same pile of regret underneath the rug. You need to measure your progress, not by perfection, but by being present. If you can stay in the moment without running back to the past or racing forward towards the future, then that's true growth. I don't know what is, but that is. As I am in this moment, that true growth. Because for me, I am not going to go back and relive the past and the mistakes I've made and the people I've hurt, although I will and have made amends. And I will not race towards the future because that is not something I want to do. I want to take my time and be able to do things the way they're meant to be. And for me, I'm in true growth. So, when we are talking about healing, healing isn't linear. But lights always return in patterns, right? A song makes you cry in a good way. You laugh again without guilt. You notice color where everything used to be gray. Because before, the song made you cry for the wrong reasons, made you cry for the pain. You cried with guilt, and you noticed gray colors because everything was somber. These are small mercies of recovery, by the way. The proof that the rebuilding is working. The light doesn't erase the ruins, it illuminates it. It says, hey, look what I survived. Look what I've become. You don't need to chase joy. You just need to make space for it to find you. And when it finds you, bam, you're in that moment. Let's do another exercise, a simple joy list. Write 3 things that make you feel alive this week. Doesn't have to be perfect. It's just be present with it. Write something that has made you feel alive. Keep that somewhere visible for you. That's your daily reminder that light still lives here. And if for some reason you are not seeing the light, write 3 things that can bring you to the light. You're feeling gloomy, you're feeling sad, you're feeling that life is just gonna end. Write 3 things that can bring you back to your happiness. I had told a friend of mine just this week that for the first time in a very long time, I remember who I was when I was in my 20s. That is a big thing for me because in all this chaos that is life, you get lost into who your true personality is and who you've become. Considering all that we've talked about, how can we have hope be our blueprint? Because hope is not naive, it's architectural. It sketches possibilities on broken grounds. When you can imagine something better, you've already started building it. Because if I can imagine me finishing my master's degree, I've already started my way and my process to it. Hope says maybe tomorrow won't look like yesterday. And that tiny maybe, it's enough for me to shift an entire life. Because that maybe is the hope that we cling on to, and that maybe becomes something more powerful as it builds and builds and builds. So start small. Sweep one corner of the room. Don't sweep the whole freaking thing. Apologize once. Do not continue apologizing over and over again. Rest without guilt. That's construction work. And that structure you're building is for yourself and nobody else. Because that structure is going to lead to your growth. This week, I had the utmost pleasure to sit down with a good friend of mine, Barry, who knows firsthand what it means to rebuild after a loss. His story is just exceptional. It's one of slow forgiveness, faith, and finding purpose in the rubble. It's really hard sometimes to pull yourself out of that rut, to be able to see what's in front of you and what even your pain is teaching you. Let's listen to what Barry had to say. Sometimes life breaks us in ways we don't recover from the same. The people we lose, the pain we carry, the guilt we bury. But what trauma doesn't tell you is that there's still life on the other side of loss. There's rebuilding, redemption, and even grace. Today, I'm sitting with someone who embodies that truth. Barry lost his son, Kevin, to alcohol poisoning the very day he moved out of his town. In his grief, Barry packed Kevin's ashes into a backpack and walked from Gilbert, Arizona, all the way to Kalispell, Montana. More than about 1,000 miles sharing Kevin's story with students, parents, and communities along the way. Since then, he has spoken to over 400,000 people about the power of choice, resilience, and forgiveness. This isn't just a story about loss, it's a story about walking forward when your heart is shattered. Thank you for being here today. Welcome to the Turning Point podcast. I can't even imagine or fathom your pain and your resilience in this process. You know, me having 3 kids myself, it's unfathomable. But can you possibly take us back to that day? And what do you remember most vividly about the moment?
Well, what I remember was we were just sitting in the living room. It was a Sunday morning, nice quiet Sunday morning, sitting around drinking coffee. And we get a knock on the door. And we're looking at each other because we weren't expecting company. And I open the door and I see 2 police officers and someone in plain clothes at my front door. It should have been a big red flag, right? It should have been, but I'm that guy. It didn't even occur to me that something bad had happened. I actually joked with them as he came in, thinking this had something to do with a dog or a parked car. But they didn't laugh at any of my jokes. One of the officers and the person in plain clothes stayed by the front door. The other officer walked in and stood in front of a brown chair that Kevin had sat in 2 weeks before. Talked about how his life was finally beginning. He said there was an accident. Your son is dead. We asked who, and they said it was Kevin, and they handed me his driver's license. There's something pretty final about it when a police officer hands you your child's driver's license. Because until that exact moment in time, you're holding out hope. You're holding out hope that this is all a big mistake. You have misspelled the last name. Get out of here. You need to be 3 streets over, or at least next door, right? Any place but my place. But when they hand you your child's driver's license, you know he's gone, and he's never coming back.
Wow. That's a really powerful moment in your life and your family's life. And I'm sure every time you share it, you relive that pain and you relive that moment. And I'm so thankful that you're able to share it with me and the people that's going to be listening to this podcast. And I'm hoping that it gives us an introspective view of what addiction is, and the choices that we make are so important.
Yes.
When you decided to do the walk with Kevin's ashes, what was going through your heart and mind at that time when you wanted to do that?
Well, I kind of have to take a little bit of a step back. We were, I was angry with God, and I told him so, right? I didn't understand why he wouldn't take me and let him live. If you're a good God, take me. I'm the old man, right? Let him live. But I told him that. And a couple days later, I had another life-changing event. I was laying in bed. It's about 4:00 in the morning. And it's difficult for me to describe this, Humpug, but I felt like someone walked in the room. Just one of those feelings. And then there was a light I'd never seen before and haven't seen since. And there was a message. And the message was that Kevin didn't suffer and something very good would come from this. And then it was gone. And to come back to the walk, I don't know what something very good is. And I suspect that that's precisely the point, is that I'm going to chase this the rest of my life. And in my mind, I wanted to do something. For the older people in your audience, there's a movie out called Lonesome Dove. It's an older movie. Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it, but I've heard of it, yes.
That was his favorite movie. And in my mind, I will tell you, it came from that movie. Something happens in that movie that's along the same lines. And in my mind, that's where I got the idea to walk. And obviously it evolved. Initially, I was going to walk the Continental Divide, right? I thought, I'll just get out and walk the Continental Divide. But as I thought about trying to tell the story, that isn't going to happen if you're on the Continental Divide. So I decided to stay on roads.
That's pretty powerful. When along your journey, because I'm guessing it took you a pretty long time to do that walk. What did the road teach you? Was it just simply following your pain? Were you taking one step at a time? Was there a moment where the road taught you about your grief? The road teaches us so many things. People do take certain paths. What did the road teach you about grief that nothing else could?
Well, first of all, I did not wear headphones. So you think about the amount of quiet time
that's amazing
that I have every single day to let things digest and that kind of stuff. Because that quiet time is missing in the world today. Because there is a still small voice out there that'll talk to us, but we've got to listen for it. I was, years ago, I was up in Montana in the Bob Marshall Wilderness. For those of you, you can Google it and see where it is. My uncle and I were sitting on top of a mountain, and it was just, utter silence up there, right? Just beautiful. And I turned and whispered to him. I said, "Man, it's quiet up here." And he said, "Yeah, and it's got a lot to say."
Hmm.
That silence has a lot to say. You got to be quiet and listen to it.
That's so true. Sometimes that's portrayable in our busy everyday life, and even prior to this, before we started recording, I was kind of telling you my hectic day already. It's so tough to kind of sit back and let things just mellow out because we always want the now and we always want the answers, and we hardly ever have the time to just sit back and listen, and even in the quiet, listen. And I think a lot of that has to do with how society has kind of just pushed us into this in this mess that we have to like every day work with, and it's what we live with. I don't think it's like that everywhere, but majority of the time in major cities we're in this mess, and you know what that's like. You've the power of the story is so true and so sharp. It kind of like gets you right off the bat. When I first read your profile, and I just gravitated to it right away. So you've told the story to so many people. How has the story evolved over the years, and what happens inside of you each time you share the story? Does the wounds heal a little bit better, or does it really hurt every time you tell the story?
Well, lots of questions there. We may have to go back to the first two again. The wound, the best way to describe it is the wound never really heals. It scabs over. Um, for me, because grief is about 20 years in the rearview mirror for me, there's one thing I can explain about grief from my perspective, and that is that when somebody passes away, at least in my case, I wanted to go back and be the way I was. I wanted to feel the way I did the day before he died. But that's never going to happen. The old you is as gone as that loved one. There's a new you there, a new you that can be a better person, but the old you is gone. And that sounds harsh, right, Hampa?
Yeah,
But it's the truth. You're never going to feel that
never the
way
same.
again.
Yeah, that is kind of in line with how I feel when there are major incidences in our life, whether it's a passing of a loved one or a major trauma that we face, because everybody's story is so different. But we're talking about dealing with grief, and how grief can lead to forms of addiction. There are many levels of grief that a person goes through. It's so disheartening when you actually think about the situation that you'll never be the person you were before, and then the adaptation to the new person that you are, it's like you almost are forced, and there's nothing you can do about it, to adapt to that person. And I can only feel that energy coming from you as far as needing to adapt every time. So it's heartbreaking, but then again, it's like you look at your story, and you see that courage of hope, you see that courage of just wanting to make a difference in somebody's life. And if you can change, and I always say this, one life, you've already done your job. To be able to speak to so many people and to tell your story, it's also a blessing in disguise. If you look at it, it almost feels like you were called to do this. You
Looks like it.
described, yeah, you described that moment, the 4 a.m. moment in where you had that vision and that calling that said everything's going to be okay. I think a lot of us who ask for help from a divine power, from God, he speaks to us in ways that we don't recognize, but then when he does truly speak, you recognize it. And it's happened to me too, and hopefully one day I'll be able to share that. But I understand what you're saying. When God sends a message, you clearly hear it. and you clearly hear what the message is. You might not understand it, but you clearly hear it, and it's so evident. It is right in front of you, and it's like you try to hide from that message. Oh man, it gets you even harder when you try to, when you are not on the right path. God tells you you're not on the right path, and I love that. Your message has so much meaning, and the meaning of forgiveness that's tied into it, because in a way you're forgiving yourself, and you're forgiving Kevin as well, to that situation, that moment for him. What did forgiveness look like for you, both towards others and towards yourself?
Well, we never really played the blame game. I refused to blame anyone, and I told my kids and everyone, I'm not going there. Yeah, was there things that could have been done differently on a number of fronts to prevent this? Yes, but playing the blame game, you're just never going to get there, right? You're just always going to be fighting that. And for me, a pastor described it best once to me. He said that anger and vengeance are going to lead to one thing: destruction. Forgiveness leads to healing. And sometimes the most important person you need to forgive is yourself. We all make mistakes, man. It's the way you handle it that matters. And that's one of my messages is, yeah, bad stuff happens. That's another thing, adversity. Bad stuff happens to everybody. It's going to define your life. Not might, it will.
It will, yeah. I speak from my minute experience that I have with the pain that I have. And it's so funny. A lot of the people I've talked to, and this is like a resounding echo from everybody that I've talked to, is that your pain shapes who you are today. And if it wasn't for that pain, you wouldn't be who you are today, and you wouldn't be doing what you are doing. So it's almost like your pain becomes your blessing.
That's what the
And
Bible teaches.
yeah, and
100%.
it's
Right? It's
and
true.
it's resounding in everybody's story that you hear. And mine is obviously not like a crazy story, but like it has its form of pain. It has its own form of choices that we make, and I resonate with the fact that you had mentioned in our prior conversation how, like, making correct choices, to even want to make that first choice, is such an integral part of your story, in a sense. Going back to forgiveness, I know you've tried to make peace with it, but do you believe we can ever fully heal from trauma, or is healing something that just keeps deepening over time?
I I believe that I guess you have to define healing, but for me, um, you let go, right? And for me, healing is moving on and trying to make something very good come from what happened. Does it change the fact that he died? No, it does not. But you have to, along with forgiveness, you've got to let go at some point. And that takes time. Don't get me wrong. It's just like people often ask me when I tell them the part about where something very good will come from this. They said, "Well, did that make everything okay?" No, it did not, because I don't know what that is, and I would rather have my son back, right? But I've come to accept the fact that this is what God wants me to do, and I'll spend the rest of my life doing it as long as I'm able to. I've been doing it for almost 20 years now, and but to an earlier question, it's still difficult to tell the story. I get through it, but it's interesting, Hampug. It's physically exhausting
Oh,
to
I
do
bet.
it. I don't I don't know why it's physically that exhausting, but it is. When I go to schools, I limit myself to doing it 3 times in a day, because by that third one, I'm tired.
Yeah, I think the emotional stressors kind of pull you
Yeah.
towards your physical pain, and it forms into physical pain or physical stress where your body kind of just overreacts to that emotion and you just physically get tired. And I completely get that. As there, speaking about speaking to students, what's one reaction from a student or a parent that stayed with you? Something that like you'll never forget, a situation maybe.
Well, there's been a few, but one of them was actually on the walk. So we go to from Gilbert up to Payson, Arizona to Flagstaff, Page, and then on and on. And there's a lot of people stop to talk to me. And I always enjoyed it when I saw brake lights go on because I figured I was going to be able to take a break and, chat with somebody for a while. Saw the brake lights go on. This guy gets out. He comes up and he said, "Were you the guy that spoke at Flagstaff High School last week?" And I said, "Yeah, that was probably me." And he gave me a hug and thanked me because he said for the first time his son came home and told him about what happened at school. Yeah. And those kind of things help a lot. I'll tell you one more. There's lots of them, but I actually spoke at a school up in Scottsdale. And I got an email a couple weeks later. There had been a party. One of the students that was at that party had heard my presentation. A student passed out. Nobody wanted to call 911. So he put the student that was passed out in his car and drove him to an urgent care facility who called 911. They air evac'd him out and saved his life.
Wow, it's so powerful when a story leads to something so much greater, because if
Mm-hmm.
that story did not exist, that person might
Yeah.
not be there. And that's just probably one minute part of
And I
it.
don't think I'm supposed to know all of them, Humpik.
Yeah.
I
I don't
don't
think we're
think I am.
supposed to.
I don't. Yeah.
I don't think we're able to handle it even if we knew. Our brains are just not programmed that way. But yeah, you can almost in a way like a web kind of see all the branches that spread out from your story, and they're good, obviously good branches. You touching base on just one situation here, one situation there, you can already see how Kevin's story has impacted lives across America. I'm sure as people hear your story even more, they're gonna relate to it in their own way, obviously in their own way. I wanted to ask, and this is kind of tying it back together into hearing Kevin's side of things, and I would love to hear what if Kevin could see what you've done with his story. What do you think he'd say to you right now?
I think he'd be shocked. Or maybe he'd say, "You got a lot of stuff left to do, Dad." um, I, you know, I'm sure he's pleased, but he would also say, "Keep marching, keep marching."
Yeah, and I love the fact that you said as long as I'm able to, I'm going to keep telling the story. I think in a way God kind of gives us the energy to want to, from our heart, be able to do this. And you had mentioned to me, and I was just like, oh my God, you know, it's it's from your heart. I mean, you really want to affect people's lives, and I'm honored to like be able to kind of share this with anybody that wants to listen, because you don't get to hear the real stuff. You get to hear the fascinated version of things when people tell it on television, or when stories are told via Netflix or anything. It's always the grander version, like the extremities are always out there, and it's just like you never get to hear the true raw emotions of things. For someone listening who's still living in their own ruins, who's still in their silence, because you mentioned, you know, someone came home and mentioned what had happened at school. What would you tell them if someone wanted to hear that from you?
There is light out there. There is a light, and you just have to look for that light, and it's there. There are part of the problem with society is we don't get to hear about all the incredible stories of redemption. They don't make the 5 o'clock news, right? I have heard so many stories through the years about people who were on the cusp of death that finally figured out, I'm going to fix this and nothing is going to get in my way. And it has to be the attitude. I was going to mention one other thing too. You mentioned the heart. As you learn to tell a story, one of the things that I started doing was, at the beginning, I tell everybody to look at me for just 1 second. And I tell them, I don't want you to listen here because you guys already know this up here. I want you to listen here. So this is where the story comes from. And this is where life change happens.
Yeah. Would you say that's what gives you hope today to want to continue doing that?
Yeah, 100%. I don't know what it would look like not thinking about the next place I want to, next place I'm going to speak at or whatever. As much as it is exhausting and time consuming, I can't imagine a scenario where I would walk away from it. I just
Yeah.
can't do that.
Yeah. And you kind of have turned tragedy into something so effective. How can people support you to get involved with Kevin's last walk, his own story? You told me this, and I was taken aback. I mean, you do this for free. You go to schools and
I do.
you talk to people just to get the message out, and that is just amazing. So, how can people support you? Where can they reach you?
They can reach me at kevinslastwalk.com. If you want to tell me your story, the contact page, you can do that. I would love to go to schools anywhere and tell the story. I just need connections. Once I have a connection, it usually works pretty well. And
That's
I'm gonna float something by you. I've only told a few people about this, but one of the more common questions I get, Hampug, is what's next for you? And I think, well, I've already written a book and walked to Montana. Come on, man. Well,
yeah.
but I'm toying with the idea. So we did the walk, right? But I'm toying with and I'm kind of crowdsourcing ideas too. So if they want to reach out with an idea or they want to get involved
That'll be
in it.
amazing. I'm sure.
So what I'm looking at is, instead of, people say, well, you should have a walk. Well, everybody does a walk. It'll either be like, there'll be layers of it. There may be a 30-day challenge, a 60-day challenge, or a 1-year challenge to walk some distance in support of a loved one that's addicted or someone you've lost.
Wow. That's a
Yeah. So it'd be
great.
everybody would do it, right? It's not about Kevin. It's about you're walking to bring awareness to the need for prevention, right? And that all of these people are real. It's an
That's
interesting idea. I just
that
need
is.
some direction.
Oh yeah, yeah. No. I'm with you on that one. I would be honored to be a part of it. I would love to come out and walk with you, even though my uh, physique does not handle walking so well. But I will come out and support. That's 100%.
Because if everybody's doing it and they're socializing about it, then that brings more
More awareness.
attention to the need,
Yeah.
for prevention. There's a lot of people out there have been impacted by this stuff.
Oh, I bet, and I'm sure that you are one of many stories that some people just don't have the courage to tell, and you've found this courage, and it's so breathtaking that I would attach myself to that and try to milk some of your courage onto me to be able to do this, because it's really hard. Even for me, and my story is not grandeur, but like even for me, it's sometimes hard just to sit here and do this and not need anything from anybody. Just be able to say, "Oh, I hope that I touched someone. I hope that this spoke to someone." I always do a prayer before every recording, and I always say, "Just God lead the way." Like I know I can't do it perfectly, and I'm not supposed to. Uh, but me being me and me being natural in front of everybody is kind of like what I want anyway. I don't want it to be makeshift and cookie cutter kind of portion of things. So he's telling a story. No, it's got to be from the heart, and it's got to be told your way. And if it cannot be done that way, then you're kind of wasting your time. Not in the sense
Students
that
see right through that too. By the
oh
way,
yeah, 100%. Oh,
you
you
have
can
to be
tell.
real.
I
when
watch
you're up
videos
there.
all the time, and so do my kids. Oh, you can see what's planted and what's not. It's like right in front of you. You can see it, and I don't like the production of things. It's like sometimes they're just too much production.
Yes,
If the production's done for a greater cause, like awareness, like resiliency, like anything to just to get attention, versus sometimes monetary values. People do kind of tend to float to that level, but I'm so thankful we were able to talk today. I know we were shooting back and forth on the timing, and I'm glad it worked out. And
yeah,
even
me too.
when my sister was, I was taking my sister back because she brought the car, and I was telling her, I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna be so late for the meeting. She's like, just do it. Just tell him you're gonna be late and just do it. Because I was thinking about just saying like, hey, like it's gonna cut it short. Let's just. I'm like, no, she's right. Let me just call him and
Yeah,
see if we can change the time and do this. But I'm so grateful, man. It's so grateful to hear your story. Thank you for sharing Kevin's
very.
story and opening your heart with us. You reminded us that healing doesn't erase the pain, but it transforms it, and sometimes the road itself becomes the way home. To everyone listening, again, please visit kevinslastwalk.com to learn more about Barry's journey and his message. And remember that trauma doesn't tell you is that survival isn't the end of the story. It's rebuilding it. Thank you again, Barry, and appreciate your time.
Well, thanks for having me on, Humpug.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.
Wow, that was pretty powerful. What I love about that conversation is how honest it is about the process. How honest Barry was about his process. No shortcuts, no miracles, just daily decisions to rebuild. Heck, his decision, that daily decision he made, was to make that walk happen. And what I love about Barry's story is that it reminds us that healing isn't about winning, it's about staying. Staying when it hurts, staying when you're reminded, staying when it quits on you, staying when everything in you wants to run, just to get away from the pain. We often make the mistake thinking that movement is progress. Progress is about the moment you choose stillness, the moment you decide that running is not a choice, because you can't run from yourself. You can't run this time around. Barry said something powerful during our talk. As we were discussing a few things, he said that rebuilding is less about what you add and more about what you release. And his process of release was different than most people's. Maybe that's the lesson for all of us here, that our healing begins the second we stop trying to become someone new and start remembering who we were before the world told us to be perfect, or who we were before life just tore us a new one and our world collapsed like Barry's did. There is work in rebuilding. Rebuilding takes tools. Truth is one of those tools. You can't lie to yourself. Patience is definitely one of those tools. If you can't be patient with yourself and patient with others, you start slowly failing. And grace. Give yourself the break and the grace you need. Truth tears down what's false. Patience keeps you from quitting, and grace lets you build without that shame. The shame to carry, the shame that, oh, I should have done this, or the shame I should have done that. Any of those is missing, then your wall starts to slowly lean. But when they stand together, you got a structure strong enough to hold joy again. Let's do this exercise. The personal blueprint. Write one thing you're trying to tear down. Personality, trait, whatever it may be. Write one thing that you're trying to build again. And then write one promise you're trying to keep to yourself this week. These 3 lines are your blueprint. Read them every morning for 7 days. After the 7 days, go back and rewrite the same 3 things again. See what you feel about it. I wanted to take this time to kind of give you guys a perspective of what's going on in my life and the changes that are coming to Turning Point Journey. If you've been following along with this session and any of the other sessions that I've done, you already know that each episode kind of mirrors a chapter of a larger journey, a journey that I've been taking and also a journey that I want everybody else to take. Soon, you'll be able to hold the journey right in your hands. Drum roll, please! Coming soon, the Turning Point Journey Workbook, built to guide you through reflections like the one we did today, the space to write, release, and rebuild yourself. Until it launches, you can download some of the free tools that I want to include and even a introductory chapter to what the workbook's going to look like and all the exercises that are going to be in there. You can also join our mailing list. If you go to turningpointjourney.com/workbook or /podcast, you'll be the first to know when things go live. And of course, have those free tools. I will be slowly putting those up. If you take one thing from today's episode, take this, that healing doesn't erase the ruins. It teaches you to live among it with grace. The past will always whisper to you, always nag at you. But now you get to decide which voice you want to answer to. There is strength in rebuilding, but there's also humility. You learn that progress isn't loud, and peace doesn't need proof, consistency. Ask yourself this: what part of you is ready to rebuild, even if it's just a little small tremble of it, small amount that comes to your mind. No filters, no edits, just the frickin' truth. And say this with me, guys, even if it's just in your heart. I'm not defined by what broke me. I'm shaped by what I choose to rebuild again. Thank you for spending this time with me on the Turning Point Journey podcast. If something spoke with you today, please share with someone. God knows they might need it. Someone that's might be standing in the ruins or in that muck, that resounding hope sound. Remind them that new beginnings don't ask for permission. It only requires courage. If you've gone through our website and downloaded some of the free tools, or even if you're ready now, if you want to take that small first step, schedule a 15-minute call with me. I'm going to put the link in the show notes. I would love to talk to you. Just small one-on-one conversation. I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm here to help you rebuild. Until next time, I'm Hampigem, and remember, the point isn't to be unbroken, it's to build something beautiful from what remains. Ciao for now.